So, welcome everyone. So, let's go ahead and get started. I'm so happy to share the screen this morning with Dr. Kerry. And we've all heard about lifespan, which is how long we live, and we've heard about health span, which is how long we stay healthy. But today's guest, Dr. Kerry, focuses on something different, which she calls JoySpan. And what that is, it's something deeper and more meaningful that asks us to create lives filled with curiosity, connection, resilience, creativity, joy, especially as we age. This book is about the human experience of aging. After nearly 2 decades of teaching gerontology at the University of Irvine, Dr. Kerry is helping shift the conversation around aging to something we resist, into something we can step into with intention. Welcome.
Oh, I'm delighted. Feel like preaching to the choir today with this great
Yes, you
community.
are.
Yes.
This is her beautiful book, and I was telling her I have this dog-eared and underlined, and it's just such a wonderful, really Bible for us as we age and also deal with aging parents. It really is a new way to look at aging and to encourage our aging parents as well to age gracefully. So let's just dive in. So first of all, will you tell us what is JoySpan and how is it different than being just happy?
Well, I can tell it with a story, which is for ages, for decades. I worked studying and working with people who were living with depression, dementia, and elder abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. And it made sense to me as a gerontologist to address the greatest suffering. And I plan to do that forever. We created an elder abuse forensic center and we were working in a multidisciplinary way with people who had endured these horrific indignities. But I had a moment actually on an airplane where I realized that actually we know in the research elements that fortify us for these long lives. And they were the same elements that basically made people more vulnerable to suffering. So I was on the plane and I thought, I need to shift to this to more of a prevention kind of mindset. And so I started just digging in, like, what is it in the literature that enables some people to have these lives that it seems like they are enjoying the whole things, and other people, the people that I was working with, was not the case at all. It was just one awful, suffering, lonely, depressed, anxious, taken advantage of situation after another.
That's my word.
Yeah, and I did. I just on my way home from work almost every day, I would just cry, cry, cry. And I had young children, so I'd be all blotchy when I went to pick them up at preschool. So that was the impetus. The impetus was, what is the opposite of this profound suffering that is just taking me under? And I certainly didn't have a name for it. And it was a long time of researching and working. I mean, when you're a gerontologist, you get to be with people in their 90s and 100s all the time. And it is the greatest gift to learn from people who are ahead of us. And then
Mhm.
couple that with what the research says. And in that, I found, oh my goodness, there's a ton of international research on this kind of thing. It's just in the academic journals and not in Barnes and Noble. And so
Right.
I was trying to think of a word for it. And in the beginning, I was thinking, kind of thinking about well-being. So I was thinking, okay, well-being span. No, that's not very catchy. And I said, oh, okay, lifespan, how long you live, health span, how long you enjoy physical and cognitive health. Maybe well span. But people thought that I was saying wealth span,
Mhm.
which also financially that matters too, but it wasn't what I was talking about. So I saw that the American Psychological Association defines joy as well-being and life satisfaction. And that was a sort of different conceptualization than I initially thought of as joy. So I tried out with patients JoySpan. I would just ask, okay, we've talked about your lifespan. Of course, we want to maximize how long you live. We've talked about your health span. We care so much about keeping you physically and cognitively sharp as long as possible. And we want your lifespan and health span to be the same. But this quality of life piece, it's your joy span. And right away, I saw with people that they would go, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about quality of life. And so then I started just calling it JoySpan, and people were saying, why don't you trademark it so that other people can't use it? I was like, no, I want people to use it. I would love for people to talk about that kind of thing. So long answer to a simple question, which is what is JoySpan? JoySpan is the quality of your life, your well-being, and your life satisfaction as you grow older. We want to
I love it
maximize
so
your
much.
joy span. And the ideal would be your lifespan, let's say 100 years, and your health span 100 years, and your joy span 100 years. I can't promise you in any way what your lifespan will be. I can't even promise you about your health span because sometimes, as much as we exercise and eat right and sleep and collagen and blah, blah, all the stuff, things happen that are not our fault. We get cancer diagnosis or an ALS diagnosis or some very, very rough, real heavy stuff. But the best news is that joy span, it is possible even in, especially in these very challenging times that come with aging, that we can work on maximizing our joy span intentionally. And to me, that feels like the most hopeful thing ever because I've never, in all my thousands of patients I've worked with, I've never met anyone who didn't have hard stuff. And that's why I don't actually use the
Absolutely.
term aging gracefully myself, because in terms of like gracefully, I've never seen that happen. I see diarrhea and falls,
Oh, the reality
yeah,
of
and
life, right?
husbands dying and all the stuff. And yet, even in very hard situations, I've seen such beauty and such gratitude and truly joy. And I think that feels like, okay, we can do something about it. And I'd love to use this time to give your listeners the exact tools so that we can start making those little changes today.
Okay, and let's wait on that because I want to talk about something, a distinction that you make between happiness and joy. Will you
Yes.
tell us your definition of happiness versus joy, and why does that make a difference?
It matters. And it was happily not me, but people much, much wiser than I am. And that is the contemplative thinkers throughout time. Notably, Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama came together and wrote a book called The Book of Joy with a lovely man who is from the Jewish faith. And these three contemplative thinkers write about the difference between happiness and joy. So happiness, as they describe it, is great, but is often circumstantially dependent and therefore often up and down. So this happens, it's great, but then oh, something happens with your kids, and so it is by nature up and down. And joy, as they define it, is much more akin to contentment, and it is therefore something that is more of an inside out. It's not as circumstantially dependent. And so the most moving book I'd ever read is Man's Search for Meaning. And I know many of you have read that Viktor Frankl book. And this physician was in a concentration camp enduring the greatest suffering. And what he said was, I can maintain my spiritual freedom, like my internal joy and well-being, even in this human's worst suffering. And when I read that, I thought, oh my goodness, whatever comes our way, we can still maintain this, what I call joy, or could be called contentment or spiritual well-being or some spiritual freedom. And I don't think the words are so very important, but I think the concept that is incredibly important.
And you talk about joy being something bigger than ourselves, which is purpose and meaning and contribution and connection, which all feel very, very important right now. One of the things that I love about your book is you also talk about the neuroscience of joy and that it's grounded in research. So can you talk a little bit about what actually happens when the brain and the body experience joy?
Yes. So
I love this so much.
it is so encouraging. And I think if it was um, Ozempic, we would be shooting it right in ourselves because these,
Yes, we would.
like these little micro joys. So moments, as you said, of meaningful connection, moments of contribution, moments of seeing nature, recognizing an act of selflessness, really hearing music, right? This releases in us chemicals that actually impact our brain, that impact our inflammation, that impact our viral load. And so in the same way that we know that the stress literature, when you're under chronic stress, you don't feel surprised that you get sick and your skin is not as good and all these things happen. And the opposite is true. The opposite of the stress response is, and when you're, and those of you who are caregivers, and I know a lot of us are care partners, are caring for sick children and parents and spouses, are our own big, heavy diagnoses. I never want people to think, oh no, well, I'm cooked because I'm under all this stress and I don't feel any joy. And now that's a real double whammy. Thanks a lot. The good news is, in the same way that physically it is these little things that we do that start to impact today, after we go through this, there are little things that you can be doing to start this counterbalance, this opposite of stress, this neurological and physical contribution to your wellness that are small. So even if you're not feeling great right now, it's okay. In fact, that's a great place to start.
So you came up with the four actions of thriving, which I just love, and you have an acronym for growth, connect, adapt, and give. Why don't you talk a little bit about how you came up with these four words, and then let's dive into each one of them, but give an overview first,
So
please.
the place that I started is Carol Riff, who is a professor at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. She, for 40 years, has studied psychological well-being, and she created the psychological well-being inventory. And it's, I mean, really tens of thousands of studies because people have used her validated tool. And it had these different components. And so years ago, when I was thinking about this, I reached out to her and I said, Dr. Riff, could we apply this to aging so that we could maintain psychological well-being in aging? And she said, absolutely. I want to focus on journal articles and academic research because that's what I do. But if you want to do whatever you want, great, because I've made it public. I'm like, oh, that is so generous. I saved her email because it was so nice. So I took those same measures, and that's what I put into the book in what I call the JoySpan inventory. But because aging brings so much challenge with it, it wasn't quite enough because I kept missing this piece that I was seeing with my patients, which is, oh, this is all well and good. But like I said, what about when your partner of 60 years dies suddenly? I'm like, and so for that, we added the literature from Israel that's on adaptation. And so
Mhm.
there were these different areas of well-being, and there were actually hundreds within each of the domains. And so it was, but you can't do hundreds of things. Like if
No.
somebody says, work on generosity and resilience and gratitude and spirituality and connection and music and laughter, you're like, I can't. So happily, after spending a ridiculous amount of time, they do group into four areas when you add that piece. So I wanted it to be a little beautiful acronym, and I ended up ultimately giving up that dream because I thought it really just has to be the words that it is. So they are all verbs, and a way that you can remember them is that it starts with a G and ends with a G.
Mhm.
Okay. And
Okay, I've got that.
in the middle is CA, and I'm from California, so that works for me. So if you can remember this gerontologist from California, it might give you a bit of an acronym.
That's
But
perfect.
so the G was a grouping of research variables that fell under the word grow. So in order to those who thrive in longevity, those who have a long joy span or a joy span as long as their lifespan, are people who have recognized that humans are intended to continue to grow. And that means that this notion that it's too late for this. Oh, I'm not going to do hard things anymore. I really can't do technology. Like all these messages that we have that come largely from the multi-billion dollar anti-aging industry telling us that we don't need to grow anymore and we can't really grow anymore because everything is downhill. It isn't
Mhm.
true. It is super bad for us. So
It's super bad.
proactively recognizing and asking yourself today, like, what am I growing in? And it requires curiosity. Like, let me think. Okay,
Curiosity is a big part of this, isn't it?
yes, it really is. And
Mhm.
if you ask yourself, what am I growing in? And you don't have something, it's okay. The next step is to think, what am I curious about? And if you go, nothing, I'm really not curious about anything. I'm just trying to keep my head above water. I am not really curious. That's just a signal to you that if you're not finding a curiosity, it's because you're not giving yourself room. So it requires a little bit of doing. And in the book, I list out, I don't know, a few hundred things that could spark it. It could also be some time with your journal, some time on a walk to just kind of think. And I'm going to give you an example of a patient of mine who is medically she lives in a skilled nursing facility. She's in her later 80s. But when we did this exercise, she's not mobile right now. We went through a few different iterations, but what she ultimately landed on was so brilliant, and it was listening. She said, my whole life,
Mm.
I have been a person who has been on the talking side of it, and I haven't ever necessarily been a listener. She became the best listener I have ever known. And every time I go to visit her, people are gathered around her bed, talking and sharing with her, and she is really seeing them. And she asks the right question and she never judges, and I can't wait to get to her, and then I have to wait in line when I get to her. And I think that's a good example of growth because it doesn't always mean something like piano lessons or weightlifting. I mean, growth is just continued self-development, and it is not a nice to have, it's an absolute imperative for each of us.
I have a 94-year-old best friend, and she was my mom's best friend, and she is all about grow. And you have other things here like gratitude, awe, humor. Hers, one of the things that drives her every day is her spiritual growth, her
Yes.
connection with others, and it's been so delightful to see her age. So grow is a big part of aging. So now we're getting to California just to
Yes.
get that acronym in your head. So we go to connect. So
Yes.
tell us about connection and why relationships are so critical to JoySpan.
Yes, so I think everyone knows it, but it's good to bring it out that
Absolutely.
in Harvard's longitudinal study, an 85-year study of looking at people starting all the way back in college and then watching them age and all the way until death, the biggest predictor wasn't their physical fitness, it wasn't their education, it wasn't their habits, health habits. It was the connection. It was the having meaningful connections with other humans and dogs. It wasn't really dogs, but I always kind of think about it. And the caveat, we all kind of know it. Like I know that I'm supposed to have connections. There is actually only one way to have connections that are going to last us these longer lives, and that is to be proactive.
Mm,
If we are
keyword.
yeah, if we're kind of like, these are the friends I've had, I went to high school, I went to college with, these are kind of my mom friends, these are my work friends. If we're not highly proactive about taking inventory of the people that we actually now feel close with, and then being that friend who leans into it. So it means being the one to make the plan, to create the book club, to make the reservation, to text people even if they don't text back. Every time a patient comes to me who says, I'm not really close with anyone anymore, I always, after I listen to them and commiserate a little bit, I then ask the question, tell me about what you've been doing in terms of outreach. And then there's always a little bit of a quiet. And sometimes I had someone recently said, well, they named a few things that they'd reached out and that people had not returned their saying, do you want to get together? That's normal. We're not for everyone. And we never know why you reach out to some person, you think this would be fun. We could walk together. And then that person, not so much. That's actually just them, and that's just normal. So what I call it is kissing a lot of frogs, right? You just you're just
Just keep
continuing
going. I
keep
like that.
kissing, and because like my mom is a very active 97-year-old, and she has employed these principles starting about when she was 80. And at the time I thought, oh gosh, 80, she's old, but now she's like, oh, 80, that was nothing now that I'm 97, because she wasn't always this way. And she now at 97 has outlived almost every single friend. And had she not proactively cultivated new relationships, relationships with younger people, relationships with people that she had traditionally thought, oh, that they're not my cup of tea, it would have been a problem. So we've got to really be quite organized about it. And again, maybe with your journal, writing out the names of the people. And you could even just start in order. If in the middle of the night I needed to call somebody about a terrible, again, diarrhea situation, you know,
Michael gonna call.
I
But
keep bringing, yeah.
you have a great exercise about friendships, so you have excuse me, so this circle and how it expands. So who's in the circle? And then how
Yes.
can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Because
So a
this is an
research
exercise in the book.
Oh, yeah. So a researcher named Robin Dunbar, he came up with what's called the Dunbar Circle. And it seems so simple, but it's held the test of time in his book on friendships. His whole research was friendships. But it was just imagine a bullseye of concentric circles. And you are in the middle, and maybe your partner is in the middle, maybe not, maybe you don't have a partner. But then you go out and there'll be five in the next. And then to actually make yourself write those names in matters, because a lot of times we find like, I have two names out in that next circle, but I not anybody too close right now. That's okay. That's temporary, but it's like looking at your arm and going, I don't have any muscles. You go, okay, I can fix that. So as you go to outer circles, you have more people in there, but you're not as close with them. And what's nice is by writing them, first one or two in the middle, then five, then 10, then 20, and on out. You might have somebody way out here and think, I like that person though. And you might think, my goal, and I've done this too, I would circle that person's name, I would circle Joni, and then I would draw an arrow, like I'd like to have her closer to me, and then think about the things that you could do. I'm going to invite her for dinner. I'm going to see if maybe I could drive her to her chemotherapy. I'm going to remember that it's been 2 years since her mother passed away, and I'm going to reach out on that day and ask about her mother, right? It's a verb to connect because it's our effort, and the more effort, then the more reciprocal it will be, but it will never be even, and we can't wait till it feels even.
Not so much. So we're still in California and we're going to the A, which is adapt. And how do we adapt with grace instead of fear?
So I think this may be the most mind shifting one.
Mhm.
So adapt. To adapt is to be willing and able to carry what it is that life brings. And every one of us is going to have stuff. So I think just that initial recognition that we know for sure that we're all going to die. That's not wrong. That's not a tragedy. That is straight up life facts.
Straight up.
And
Yep.
before our death, we're going to have stuff that's maybe physically tough, maybe stuff with our adult children, maybe stuff with our grandchildren, our partner, our diagnosis, our financial reversal. There's going to be stuff. So that kind of level setting, because I've had so many patients and I'm working with somebody now who is like, I just can't believe it. I never thought that my partner might pass away. It's like, it's okay to let yourself think that because the odds are they are going to. It's either going to be them or you. And most likely, as a female, it's most likely going to be them. So, like, let yourself think that and that it's okay because when those things come, the willing, like, I'm going to adapt to what life brings. And then the able goes into the coping literature. And there's a lot of proven ways that we can learn to live with the grief that comes that are both internal and external coping mechanisms. And I'll give you one example, and they're all in the book, and you can kind of check off what you've tried. And this is not to say that you don't acknowledge and feel the grief. So that is
That
step one.
self-acceptance.
Yeah, right. Like, when I was writing this chapter on adapt, I was writing like, oh, things happen in your life that you never expect, blah, blah, blah. And then as I was writing it, our daughter, who was just about to leave for medical school, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And
Oh
she
my.
wasn't
Oh,
able to go to the medical school. And instead, from leaving, she had to move home, which was rough for her, and then become a patient. And I was, as I
it
was
must
writing,
have been such a hard time.
yeah, so you cry, you feel it, you don't deny it, you don't put on a happy face, like, ugh. And then either you go, okay, I'm going to just choose to stay in this suffering for then the rest of my life, or when you're able to find the work that it takes to go, okay, I'm going to try these internal and external coping mechanisms to cope with this very hard, let's say, caregiving situation. And it may be the external, like maybe it is counseling. Maybe it is just telling a friend about what I'm going through. Maybe it is also journaling. And I think stacking all of those, like I'm going to try all of these things as I carry these hard things. So
Mhm.
a lot of times the difference in somebody suffering for the rest of their life and having a short joy span and somebody having a long joy span isn't that isn't the absence of challenge, it is the ability and the willingness to put the work in to adapt to the challenge.
I would say also, I would add to that, having gone through some very difficult times when my mom was sick, being an only child and caring for her, that sharing is really important in that adaptation during that time and also accepting help, which is something that I'm watching a friend of mine go through with her aging mom right now is we're sharing, so that's good. But the ability to accept help is something that I pushed away a lot because I didn't know how to accept it. But I think that that is one of the most important things in the adaptation of this moment in time.
I could not agree more. I'm trying to encourage this other researcher I know to write a book called Easy to Help, um, about being somebody who can. And there is a book that is called Counting on Kindness: Dilemmas of Dependency by
Mm,
Wendy Lustbader, who talks about what you're getting at, which is like the ability to accept help. And it's not easy. And as women, we're not used to it. And sometimes it doesn't feel very good because we're used to being the givers. But it is what fosters our connection. And we're giving, when you say yes to somebody's help, you are giving them that good feeling of being the helper. So it like with
which
our adult children, it's not that we like, oh, I just have to be independent. No, interdependent. And like you said, accepting, like, thank you, Guy, thank you. I am drowning right now.
right. And you mentioned giving, which goes into our now we're at GCAG, which is give. And
Yes.
why is giving, I mean, we just talked about it in even small ways, so important during this time.
So, giving is the verb that encompasses the research on purpose. And purpose is being shown to be such an important driver. And so, if we let this $60 billion anti-aging industry tell us that we are less than, we don't recognize that we have something to give, right? And then we stop. And that is really, really bad for us. So, um, purpose feels big, like it's a capital P, like I'm going to go cure cancer. Purpose, really, if we can think about it, is just, it's very simple. It's just recognizing that all life long, we have something to give. And then we're going to do the work to give it. So that example that I gave you of that friend who is listening, that's her give. And what's great about these four areas, they all feed off of each other. So when you're giving, you tend to connect. When you're giving, it tends to help with adaptation. It tends to then help you grow as a person. So they all go in the same direction. And so sometimes when people say, where should I start in working on my JoySpan? You can think, you can pick any of them because it's going to propel you toward any other of them. You can pick what you're strong in and say, I'm going to do more of that, or you can pick like, I'm not actually having much adaptation right now, and you could start there.
So again, the acronym is GCAG. So
Yes.
with
And
all
sometimes
of
I
the,
think I could have like I could have made it like pushed it a little to try to make it spell out core, like it's the core to ourself, or it could have been, I mean, I still think about it, like maybe I should have, but the publisher was saying you need to turn this thing in. I'm like, okay.
you know what? I mean, I've got it. I think we all have it now. So these are all beautiful ideas, and it takes a lot of intention to make them happen and to be self-aware, do some self-reflection to see where, you might be, a little less than in certain areas that you can really dive into each of those words. But mindset is a huge piece of this. So talk about how much of aging is actually shaped by this right here.
Exactly. I'm so glad. Okay, so the world is justifiably talking about AI right now. But what I
Yes.
want to talk about right now is IA. So that stands for internalized ageism. And internalized ageism
Hmm.
is creating in us a decline mindset. And that mindset is that everything gets worse as you get older. You're less relevant, you're less attractive, you're less. That is so dangerous. Number one, because
So
it's not
dangerous.
true. There's many things that get better as you get older, but you never hear about them. And the reason you don't hear about them is because it's not lucrative. Like to feed this fear, we have to feed this everything is bad, therefore buy my product to save you from the hideousness of being older. So, your step one for every person who is listening right now is to acknowledge the fact that we all have some internalized ageism. Here I'm a gerontologist. I think about this, and I, of course, have internalized ageism too, but we need to catch ourselves. So, when yesterday I went out and I couldn't remember where I parked my car when I got back from the airport, when your mind goes, oh no, I'm losing my mind because I'm old. You stop inside your mind and say, Kerry, no, you're tired. You have jet lag. You were talking on the
Exactly.
phone when you parked your
Absolutely.
car. You're not
Yep.
losing your mind. Hush. Or another time, your phone will flip around and you'll see all these chins and you think, oh no. And then you think, wait, so what? I'm almost 60. And yes, that's what chins do. That's what
That's what
necks
chins
do.
do.
It's like
Yep.
that's how you bend your neck. Doesn't mean anything that you're less than. So leaning into what is known to get better as you get older, and briefly, the research shows us that we can have better problem solving as a result of the neurological integration and the fact that we've solved so many problems. We have greater humility, and that would be a game changer in this world if we could lean into not such self-aggrandizing and thinking about others. We have a greater appreciation of music and art and nature, a greater propensity for spirituality. Sometimes a greater ability to just let out a belly laugh or accept somebody as they are. And these are the biggies. So not
Mhm.
if, but when we attend your funeral, nobody's going to talk about your neck. Nobody's going to talk about your abs. Everybody's going to talk about these things that get better, that can get better as you get older and that really matter. And so that mindset, which is a growth aging mindset, like it's going, I'm going to continue. And so my mom at 97 truly, with intention, shifted. She is the best version of herself that she has ever been. She's less judgmental, she's more chill, she's hilarious. And it's because of a choice that she made to see and lean into that best possible growing self.
I adore this conversation so much. And I feel like we need to get this out into the world even more. And you are doing this with your book. But this is how we need to age and to celebrate the crow's feet, to celebrate our bodies changing, to appreciate our knowledge, like you said. I mean, it's all of those things. One of the most interesting things about your book, to me, was Dr. Kerry, was about genetics versus habits. So I want to tell you a quick story.
Great.
Both my grandma and my mom both had dementia. They went to the same doctor here in Seattle, and the doctor looked at me one day and she goes, "You're next." And I'm like, I walked away. I mean, it still makes me cringe today. And almost, it almost put me in the fetal position, to be quite honest, because having watched these two very important people in my life go through dementia, I'm like, that is not what I want. So
A physician
a
said that.
physician said that to me. So I think it's really important for all of us to talk about genetics because we've been told something for so long, not just from my mom's doctor, but from all, so much of society says, oh, if you have this genetic, you're predisposed to it. But you have a different perspective. And I welcome that so much.
Okay, well, I want to start with saying I am so deeply sorry because that is absolutely inaccurate. And it's so dangerous
So
to like
dangerous.
plant the seed in somebody like, oh, that's
Yeah.
going to happen to you. Okay. So what the research shows us is that there have been different studies and it ranges between 14 and 25% of the way that we age and the longevity of how long we live. It has a genetic component. But that means that 75 or greater isn't genetic. And you can
Mhm.
have a gene for something. It's the whole study of
Amazing.
epigenetics. And that
Mhm.
gene um, it isn't triggered, right? And so there's an epigeneticist at UCLA, Stephen Cole, who did such interesting research about what makes a gene express versus not. And things including purpose, were shown to have a different epigenetic gene expression. So, genetics is not destiny in both directions. So, if your parent had dementia, that does not mean you're going to have dementia. If your parent didn't have dementia, it doesn't mean you're not going to. Some people say, like, well, my mom lived to be 100, so I'm in good shape. I was like, oh, honey, no, everybody's aging path is their own aging path. Having said that, we have much more control about our aging destiny than anybody realizes. And also, there are also times where we're going to get things and it's not a blame kind of thing, right? You can be doing all the practices, both physical and internal. And because of this fact that we're someday going to die, we're still going to get things. And it's not, we never go, oh, that's your fault. You did this wrong. You did that wrong, whatever. No, you do everything that you can. And then if you are in the percentage, then you can still. So I have a lot of friends right now who are living with dementia because I'm a gerontologist. And it still impacts like this internal cultivation, this mindset of recognizing that you are of great value and that you have things to give all life long. It matters. It matters maybe even more with cognitive impairment or when you're carrying a condition. And so, this friend that I'm thinking about right now, whose name is Joan, she this is her seventh year into Alzheimer's disease. And that's pretty long to have lived with a disease. We get together every Tuesday. She is the most grateful person I've ever been around.
So beautiful. I
When I'm
love that.
with her, she's in the moment. She always gets me to go, look at that. She really loves trees. Look at that tree. We talk about it. I come away so elevated. And so if we erroneously think that, oh, if you get cognitive impairment, you're on this certain path. No, we do everything we can to keep our brain and our body healthy. But even with those conditions, our internal fortitude make a difference of how we travel that path.
Thank you for that. I believe everyone needs to hear that message because it lightens your load. That is for
Yes,
sure.
and I would love to have some new words for, because first of all, dementia, worst word ever,
Worst
dementia.
word ever. Yeah.
And so then we use cognitive impairment, which is better, but it's also kind of long. And it's just, changes physiologically in our brain. And I've had the privilege of looking at brains and the neurofibrillary plaques and tangles. It's just a physical thing. It's not, um, I had somebody recently come and he said, I just want to tell you, doctor, if I get dementia, you might as well shoot me. And it stopped me in my tracks because I think a lot of people have been given this messaging that they're not worth anything if they don't have their brain just as it is now. And we're so much more than our brains. And it really makes me feel like we need to do a much better educational job, especially with cognitive impairment, because we're a hyper cognitive society where it's like everything is just, can you, and there's so much more to it. And I have
Mhm.
somebody that he has a sharp mind, but he hasn't cultivated other parts to it. He's miserable. And I think ironically, if his mind wasn't as sharp, but he had cultivated this connection and gratitude and whatever, he wouldn't have been so estranged from his family.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Right. Absolutely. Um, and with I just want to say one thing here, but with my mom's decline over 10 years, it was very hard. It was a very difficult time, but there was an ultimate gift at the end. And that gift, to me was that it's a long story, but there was an ultimate gift in the time and in those moments. And so in aging, whether it's difficult or not, you can find the gifts. So I'll leave it
Exactly.
there.
Exactly right. And
Yeah,
exactly right. And we're not in any way saying it's not hard. It's hard and it
yeah,
hurts. And like, and also there is love in it and there is growth and there are
yeah,
gifts. And a lot of the care that we give, nobody ever sees. Nobody appreciates. In fact, sometimes other siblings criticize because they're not there. And that hurts a lot and feels really lonely. And yet, when it is all over, like knowing that we loved and we maybe made mistakes, but we, still showed up, that matters. And there's no perfect caregiver. There's no perfect ager. And I don't even like people go, oh, you're an expert on aging. And I just think, no, there's aging is living, and nobody's an expert at living. So everybody is struggling. That's we're supposed to, and nobody's nailing it. I've ever in the history of humans, nobody ever went, oh, did I ever? No, I know.
So let's talk about everyone's aging. And you have a lovely exercise in the book, and it's called One Small Change. So, one of the most actionable parts is to begin small. And it's not like you have to dive into all of these things that we talked about today, but what is one small shift that you can take? So, um, and you have questions like, well, and I want to ask the audience this. Well, why
Good,
don't you talk
good.
about it a little bit? So how well am I caring for my body? So if you would put in the chat, how well are you on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe let's say that.
So
And
10 is like, oh wow, I'm really caring for it a
yeah,
lot.
it's like this.
Yeah, and one is like, I'm not doing that. Okay,
Yeah,
let's put it in.
so
Let's all put it in the chat.
let's all put it in the chat. So Corey says 5. I would say 7 for me. I've got some things I need to work on. Dr. Carey, you're at 7 too. Good
Yeah.
job. We got it. We've got some room. Um, and then we have Stace who says 5. So when Dolly, good job. 9. Francesca, 8. Good job. Nell, good job. 6. So if you were to increase these numbers, Nancy's at 6, what would you do? And you can just write, either in the chat or make some notes to yourself about, maybe one small change. So, Dr. Carey, what's one small change you would do?
Oh, I was typing it in with more
Oh, okay.
yoga. I
More
think,
yoga.
yeah, because I watch patients and things tighten up, and that's why you kind of shuffle when you walk. And we gotta like really think about flexibility as a part of our fitness portfolio. So I could do more yoga.
Flexibility is so
Yeah.
key. So, Dolly says more yoga, stretching for me, and balance.
Yes.
Awesome. Consistency, Nancy, that's mine. I need more consistency. I get out and walk the dogs every day, but they're, like toning my abs, that's a big one for me. Regular stretching, longer walks. No, great job. Okay. Am I challenging my brain? Next question. I would say 8 on that. Roughly 11 definitely makes me challenge my brain. So, in so many ways. So, Dr. Carey says 9. I probably am, yeah. 7, Nell, 8, Christine, Corey, 9, uh, 7, 7. Good job. I think that's one that we all know is vitally important to our longevity and brain health. And what would you do to increase your brain challenge? So, what would you do here?
I want to lean into creativity a little bit more. I want to like lean into because I do a lot of like analytical stuff, a little more like on the creative brain part.
Yeah. I've been drawing more and it's been so fun. I've been taking classes in pottery from a neighbor down the street. So that's been really fun. Go out of the box, focus on things I'm not as familiar with. I think that's really really a good one, Holly. Yeah, because it tweaks your brain in different ways to try something new, build muscle, Christine. That's great. How am I feeling emotionally? How are you feeling emotionally? I would say 9 right now. Dr. Carey, 9. Nell, 8. Good job. And this is a hard one. This can be hard for a lot of people, and I think this is probably the most vulnerable of these. And how would you respond to that, Dr. Carey?
Yeah, I think that it's different on different days too. You can go,
Mhm.
gosh, I'm feeling pretty great. And then the next day, like, oh, I just feel awful. Like, what's the point of this? So recognizing that there's quite a bit of fluctuation and that we're sort of starting fresh each day.
Okay, so with all of those things considered, what is one thing that you could begin with today? I'm going to say sit-ups. See, it can be really simple, and I just need to have consistency to do it. Dr. Carey, what about you?
Um, I am I am working on making more concentrated time for my friendships because since the book has, I've been so grateful that it became a New York Times bestseller and I've had more travel, which then kind of has taken me away from my friendships. And that's, I need to like figure out with this new schedule how to really show my friends how much I care about them by putting in concentrated time and effort and thoughtfulness.
And I thank you so much for sharing that because, life it can be, it comes in waves, right? And, sometimes your friendships, for instance, are, at a 9, and sometimes because life happens and, in this situation, it's wonderful. You're a New York Times bestselling author, amazing. And, there's a little valley here where you know that you need to focus on that. So Holly says, I have a book club and we focus on fiction. I'm going to reach out to some different people and make this book the focus. I think that's so good.
So,
Great, Holly, do it. That's why we did our book club on JoySpan this month and connecting with family where they are at emotionally. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. That's really lovely. So, in wrapping up, before we get to a kind of a fun close, I'd like to have you talk about how to improve JoySpan, starting immediately. And we've talked about gratitude. What about sleep and movement, and maybe more laughing, for instance?
are you asking me?
Yes, yes, I am.
So, yeah, if we just do like start with one small thing, when people say, like, okay, I would challenge us this. Okay, so the reticular activating system of our brain is such that what we draw attention to is what we see more of. And so, tomorrow, when each of us wake up, before our feet even hit the ground, instead of this thing where we for a second go, oh, I have a dentist today and my kid's getting a divorce and my hip really hurts and my husband sleep apnea was kept me awake, like thinking about kind of the problems, which
Yes,
there are
right.
all, yeah, instead
Yes.
of like looking at this, the very first thing is count on your fingers 10 things that you are grateful for or that are right. So I'll give you my example. My mom has congestive heart failure and also full body osteoarthritis. And so when she started this practice, she said, I always think about what hurts the most, but I'm going to start finding areas of my body that don't hurt. And so my mom, bless her, at 97 years old, living independently, she'll lie in her bed and she'll put a thumb down, like, well, my neck doesn't hurt, my nose doesn't hurt, my back of my head doesn't hurt. And she'll find the areas. And I think that's an example of saying, I have a bed to sleep in. I'm going to go down and have coffee. I'm going to go pet my dogs. Like what you see, you focus on in that same way that if you buy a certain kind of car, then you see it all around, what you draw attention to. And so starting our day tomorrow with 10 things. And maybe there are things about aging, like these positive things that we can lean into to start to change our mindset could maybe be a step one.
Love that so much. And I want to add, somebody said, try to be more like Carrie's
And
mom.
I don't know if people do Instagram, but on Instagram, my little thing is the underscore gerontologist. And so I put my 97-year-old mom on there, and I'm going to start putting more different people because I want to give examples. Like, I want to have men and people of different socioeconomic status and people of different gender identities, and just to show, because I get to see thousands of examples of people who are aging brilliantly with long joy spans. And so it's not such an anomaly. I want it to be like we need these role models, and then we're going to become those role models so that the people behind
Absolutely.
us don't have to have all the ridiculousness that we've had to have. And we can be those examples. And we are the ones that not going to say bad things about ourselves, are not going to say bad things about aging. We're going to change. Like we're the revolutionaries on the front line of the new longevity.
I love that so much. So before we close today, I want to invite you to the Revel 11 lightning round. Just you, Dr. Carey. So
Oh,
this is just first responses, 11 truths, no overthinking. Are you ready?
yeah, I'm scared. Not scared.
No reason to be scared. This is fun. One word for this season of your life.
Joy,
Something you're releasing.
anxiety,
Something you're protecting.
peace,
A belief you've outgrown.
that I'm bad with money.
Oh, good job. Me too. I'll add to that. A boundary that changed everything.
Just one word.
You can have a
Okay.
couple of
I
them.
have a boundary. I have released some friendships of people who make you feel small or make you feel less than. And that has really helped a lot to say, like, people, I used to hang out a little bit with people who would talk bad about people and just made me feel kind of not included. And not having that anymore has felt like,
Oh,
yeah.
new world. Congratulations. I applaud you. What matters less now?
um, Appearance,
What matters more now?
authenticity,
One practice you return to.
gratitude,
A truth you trust more today.
God,
Something midlife has given you.
freedom,
Who are you becoming?
Kerry.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for playing along. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for writing this book. It is a Bible for everyone who is aging, has aging parents. It's also an invitation to become yourself, to matter, to drive your everyday with this right here in this book. Thank you, Dr. Carey,
Well,
so
each of
much.
you, we're all doing it together. It's going to take all of us in the same way that we needed to change what people thought about what it meant to be a woman. We, all of us, are changing what it means to be an old person, and that old is
Thank you.
not bad, and that we don't have to stay young. We don't have to like pretend we're young, that we are going to redefine aging one by one by one by one. And all of you are going to go out now and be ambassadors. And when you hear your friends say, oh, something bad about themselves, you can be the one to say, like, thank heaven that we're
Yep.
older. We've
Yep.
already been younger.
JoySpan, go get it. Share with your friends. I'm buying multiple copies and sending them out as soon as possible. Dr. Carey, An absolute joy. Thank you so
Oh,
much for
thank
joining
you so
us.
much for what you're doing. I really appreciate your community. Wow.
Thank you so much and have a beautiful day. And I hope to talk with you soon.
You too.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.